Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. And so tonight we're going to talk about whatever you want to. I really don't have a reason for doing this. There's no objective, there's no topic. We're not raising money for anything in particular. Any money that comes in is just going to like the general fund. Um, just thought it might be a good night. I've actually kind of come to enjoy this. So I figured we. I figured we could hang out. Um, all right. I don't think we're going to be talking about that though. All right. So we're giving everybody a few minutes so they can get in here. And while we're doing that, I'm going to try to put the links out. Hello, everybody. Give me 1 second. I'm putting out the links. Whatever you want. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. I mean, within reason, of course. All right. Okay, so Santa Fe. I've never seen you live before. Yeah, I try to do it at different times, so everybody can kind of come in. Am I affected by the fires? No. Well, not really. They're not close to me. I mean, I guess they are relatively speaking, but the odds of them getting here are pretty slim. It's not something I'm really worrying about at the moment. Brian Welsh, both actually, both sound pretty good to me. Thank you, Deborah Nunziato. Okay. Thank you, Chance. Guinness, Wyatt. Well, I interviewed Joe Rogan. I mean, sure, get him on. I don't know that he'd respond to my messages. Let's talk about DeSantis. I try to keep a clean show. No, I'm not really a big fan of the current governor of Florida. He's let's just say less than effective. Let's see, Cool Shade. Why not run for office? Really, I think I'm more effective where I am. I don't really. I think that you can run your life better than I can. And then there's the added thing of politicians have skeletons in their closet, and I have a lot. It's just not something I want to deal with, to be honest. Hello from Coast Guard City, USA. Let's see. Is there an uptick in theories? Yeah. Okay. So I am going to be doing a video about the documentary that got released. A lot of people asked me to debunk it. I'm not really going to do that. I mean, none of my work's going to be that. There's a doctor that has agreed to let me basically use her stuff and run with it from there. I'm going to go more into why people buy into theories like that. Proper ways to protest effectively. Depends on the situation. I tend to believe in a diversity of tactics. I don't think there's a wrong way to protest, really. There are some people that say, you don't want to upset public relations. You don't want to do that. It all depends on the situation. Though most times the goal of protesting is to get people talking. So a lot of the stuff that people say, oh no, that's going to, upset people. It's still getting them talking. So let's see. Am I going to talk about that documentary? Yeah, I am. In a roundabout way. That will actually be the next video, unless something crazy happens. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, Holden. Opinion on councilism as a political ideology. I'm going to have to Google that. I'll be honest. I'm not sure what that means. Do I believe no, I do not believe it's a hoax. I don't believe it's overblown. In fact, I think we're making a huge mistake right now, rushing the reopen. I've said before in other videos, I think that we can reopen in a very strategic manner, kind of rolling, and then we'll end up having rolling lockdowns again, where people need to stay home. I don't think that just opening up like it seems like we're going to do is a good idea. I think we're going to end up causing a lot more harm. Let's see. Thank you, Brian. Thoughts on Snowden? I think he did what he thought he had to do. And I think that he was acting in a way his conscience demanded. I don't believe that he was a sellout. I don't believe that he was a traitor. I think he was doing what he felt was necessary to defend the country. I know that sounds weird, but I really believe that he had the right intentions. And as near as we can tell, he didn't give away a lot of means and methods. Thank you, Arash. I don't think he missed anything. Yeah, we're just getting started. Giving away secrets, not a traitor. Yeah. Okay. So treason is a specific thing. It has to do with actually levying war against the United States. He didn't do that. What he did was disclose some generalized means and methods, which is bad. Like as far as the National Security Act is concerned, and he could definitely be prosecuted for it. But I believe that his intentions were to protect the American people, and the oath that he took should supersede the statute, considering it was to the government. Thank you, Rogue Dog. Thank you, Nabil. Hello to Germany. When should I let my kids out to play with friends? That's a really tough question. That's a tough question, because then it's a chain. You have to worry about not just the people that they're playing with, but their parents, whether or not they're being safe, there's a whole lot to that. I don't know that I have an answer to that. That's a lot of questions. Cats or dogs? Definitely dogs. Do I believe in lesser evil voting? I understand it. I understand why people vote in the sense of harm reduction. I get it. I tend not to support candidates that I can't support. I generally don't support candidates anyway. I support policies. And the lesser evil voting thing, I get it. I understand why people do it. And there are definitely certain groups that it's incredibly important for them to engage in harm reduction. I understand it. It's just one of those things, because I am very, very much an ideologue. I don't know that I can say, yeah, it's a great thing, but I can't condemn somebody for doing it either. I get it. What is your opinion of ranked choice voting? I like it. I definitely think it's better than what we have right now. um, do, do, do. How can you find out where the stimulus money went? Eventually, there will be a watchdog that publishes all of that. It's going to take a while. I don't even know that the government knows where it's all going right now. What I think of the Lincoln Project, I retweeted Morning in America. That's what I think of it. I think that they are conservatives who are center right, not far right, and they don't like far right ideas. And I think that's, again, I think they are acting out of pure motives. Whether or not I agree, Chris Bentley, we will talk about that because I've got a whole bunch of stuff about that. I don't know that, I mean, I obviously don't agree with everything that they believe, but I believe that their motives at the Lincoln Project are pure. They don't like where their party is headed. They're partisans who are upset with the way Trump's taking it, and I can't say I blame them. Mac B, what about Salon Barbie in Dallas? Carrie and I had like an hour and a half long argument over this. I don't necessarily buy a lot of her story. I think that she set out to prove a point. She wanted to push the system, and it hit her, and she's upset because people of her socioeconomic class normally have a level of protection from that. Thank you, Maurice. My take on the current Biden allegations. Which ones? So there was one that was obviously a setup through the right-wing troll guy. I can't remember his name right now. Wall, maybe. It certainly appears that one was a setup, but there are a couple that certainly need investigation. I don't say, believe all victims unless they're accusing somebody with a D after their name. I think there needs to be an investigation. Let's see. Don't know if you've talked about this going on in South Dakota with the government. If you're talking about the checkpoints outside the res, tribal land is tribal land. I don't believe the governor has any say in that. I don't think they should. Tribal land is tribal land. There's not even any real argument to that. That's the res. That's the res. The governor does not have authority there. Thank you, Woody. What do you think we can do to stop these clowns in the streets with their guns without infringing on the Second Amendment? Mock them relentlessly. Eventually, they will get tired of being made fun of, and most of the people who do this are very ripe for being made fun of. If you follow me on Twitter, you just saw me doing it, and I normally don't, but I mean, that was just over the top. I mean, there was a part of me that was like, these are people that actually support the lockdown, trying to make them look as bad as possible, because it was just that over the top wrong. Let's see. Thank you, Dim Studios. Thoughts on the Battle of Athens? Can it be done again? Should it? Well, I definitely won't say it should. That sounds like a conspiracy charge. I think that something like that could happen again. I realistically, I could see it happening again, and I could see it going very much the same way. If you don't know that story, that's totally worth a search engine check there. Thank you, artist sculptor. Thank you, Lionel. Let's see. If schools open in August, will you send your kids back to school? I don't know yet. I would have to wait till then. I know there was talk about it happening now in Florida, and no, they weren't going. I am not going to. I am not going to use the state government's judgment on that. That's not going to factor into it at all, to be honest. Thank you, Christopher Sullivan. Thoughts on HR 6666 bill? I honestly saw that floating around and thought that was a meme and thought it was a joke. I haven't checked it out. Are you? That's actually a thing. I'll have to look into it, because if it was anything even remotely close to the meme, that's entertaining. Viable candidates other than the Trump or Biden choices. Biden isn't the nominee yet. He's the presumptive nominee. He may not get it at the convention. And if we have an investigation that determines any of the 8 are viable, he shouldn't get it. So we just have to, again, that's kind of a wait and see thing on that. Thank you, Joey J. Thank you, Anthony Childers. What are your thoughts on foreign relations with China after this is over? I don't think this should impact it. I think right now there's elements that want to scapegoat China and use them as the enemy, because you can't really blame the virus, so they want somebody to blame, and they're going to use China. I don't think that there was anything intentional. I don't think there was any malice. There's this big thing of, well, they were buying up PPE and they hadn't told everybody yet, and they didn't tell everybody what they knew. You mean kind of like the White House was doing while they were telling everybody not to buy masks, so they were out getting them for the White House. I don't know that I can blame an entire nation for something our own government did. Thank you, Arash. What went down south? Yeah, we will talk about that at length. So if you are not aware, thank you, Brian. If you're not aware, there was a coup attempt in Venezuela, and it was a joke by all standards. It was horribly planned, executed even worse. They had no backup, no money. What I am starting to believe is that the guys that are in custody down there right now, I don't know that they were aware that there was no money, or that there was no backup, that it wasn't sanctioned. A lot of the stuff they did in that video, in their capture video, it makes it seem as though they feel right now they're working for the government. This is a hunch. I have no evidence whatsoever to back this up. But from what I'm seeing, I think that they might have believed the cavalry was on the way, and that they were doing the advance for an official U.S. involvement. I don't believe that was actually the case. I think they were lied to. If that's what they currently believe, I think they were lied to. But I can't prove that. It's just the way they're behaving. It's something very intangible that's leading me to believe that. Thank you, John. Thank you, Hiram. how do you ward off mosquitoes in Florida? You don't. You you just learn to live with them. Thank you, emoji. Uh, see, thank you, CJJ. Please do another chat. I will have T on anytime she wants. To be honest, like for real. Yeah, I enjoy her take on things, and I like the fact that she's not a political pundit. You know, that's not her profession. It's not what she does. This is every person. You know, this is a view, and it's a smart view. Even the takes that aren't mine, they're not bad takes. You know, I've seen nothing of hers that I would oppose giving air to. So, thank you, Dave. Anya Pompil. It's a good phone interview with Silver Corp. Yeah, but I don't think, from what I can tell, again, my hunch, I don't know that the Silver Corp management is entirely innocent. I don't think. I think they made some bets and that they didn't pay off. So, but again, that's a hunch. I don't want to go too far into what I think happened without something to back it up, and I'm trying to get something to back it up. So we'll just have to wait a week or so on that one. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Brian. Now I'm caught up for 1 year of your videos. Thank you. Who would you choose out of Yang and Tulsi? Right now, Yang, because I think that his permanent solution is probably, like, for what we're dealing with right now, his UBI plan. I think that's something that at the very least needs to be temporary, because we're at 15%. And yeah, some of that's going to come back pretty quick, but a whole lot of it isn't. And if they want the economy to rebound, they're going to need to do it. So again, and those who watch this channel frequently know I am not actually a supporter of UBI on ideological grounds. From a philosophical standpoint, it's not something I agree with. But right now, I wouldn't fight against it. Like, people need it. And I think that if we want to keep the economy intact, we're going to have something similar. So why not use the person that's been talking about it for quite a while? Thank you, Tim. Let's see. Thank you, Nyabi's Adventures. Thank you, Random Nobody. Thank you, Arash. We have trolls in here again. I saw Punk site in there moderating, maybe. I think YouTube filters them. I don't actually see a lot of the stuff that comes through, or I just don't catch it. Thank you, Leslie Johnson. Do you think we will get another stimulus bill? I sure hope so. I think that I don't think they have a choice. I don't think they have a choice unless they're really just at the point where they're like, let it all burn. The system that we have requires constant consumption. If people don't have money, that system doesn't work. And right now, even people going back to work today, which I think is a mistake, because I think it's going to end up shutting the economy down again for a longer period. I think that they're going to have to do something. I think we're definitely going to need another one. Thank you, the Peace Forge. Thoughts on the Sackler family's role in the opioid epidemic? How is it possible that no one in that organization received jail time? Lack of outrage by the public. Public outcry is a very important tool. And if it's not leveled at the right time, yeah, people can walk, especially if they have money. Thank you, LM, or Mel M, Mac B, Gravy Stills, Irrational Guards, yeah, Mill Team 6, Tactifuls. For those that don't know, because I imagine there's going to be a lot of comments about this, there was a gathering, a public assembly today, in which they went into Subway afterwards. One of the people had an inert AT-4, an anti-tank rocket over their shoulder, and another person had something that looked like a 50 cal, but it was actually made of wood. And yes, I prefer them carrying that stuff than to the real article, but at the same time, why carry it unless the goal is to provoke a reaction and overstep it? Nobody thinks that that's normal. Nobody thinks that's normal. Thank you, Diane Rose. I think the post office is in trouble under Trump. I don't think that it's going to go away. I think that they may need a serious infusion after a new president comes in. But I do believe that Trump is trying to end it. But I do not think that Congress or the Senate in general, even the Republicans, I don't think they're going to let that happen. I think they understand the function of the post office a wee bit more than the president. Thank you, G. Wolf. I'm so black-pilled right now and was so much happier the 30 years I didn't pay attention to politics. I know I need to, but it feels pointless. I'm going to do a video on that. Yeah, I'll tell you this. That's a permanent solution to a temporary issue. And yeah, it is pointless if everybody quits. Otherwise, it's not. If you look at the arc of history, things get better. And you just have to play your part in that. Michelle King, how come we aren't hearing numbers from within the system, the prison systems? Because people don't care. People generally do not care about those confined. It's really what it boils down to. They're not raising enough of a stink. That public outcry isn't being leveled against the various departments of corrections or the Bureau of Prisons. And they also probably don't know. They probably don't have accurate numbers, because I doubt they're wasting the money testing. That's the way they're going to look at it. Thank you, Micah Smith. So is this Curious George hat, is it a prop or is it just a cool hat? There's a long story about that. There's a video on it too. I've talked about it in depth in a video. It was kind of a mascot for a group I was with, and then my kid wound up really liking Curious George, and I happen to have all this stuff, so it all came back out. It's not like a prop or part of a persona. It's actually mine. Thank you, Rose Bean. I've been listening to these since you threatened your boy's shoes. Thank you. Thank you, Murphy McManus. It was the last SGM. Yeah, you could send me a DM. Brett Drinkwater. Let's say, good day from Tasmania. What are your thoughts on YouTube banning those conspiracy videos? I get why they do it. If it was my platform, I wouldn't want that stuff on there. However, I think they should leave like the original one at one location, maybe leave it up and debunk it. I don't know that censorship is the right answer. Provide the same way they do with false information about what's going around right now. You have that little bar underneath that says, hey, here's some real information. Maybe YouTube could do that rather than just ban it outright. I mean, that's accepting a little bit too much, or maybe expecting too much from them. But the anime alchemists, you and the family doing okay? Yes, we're doing great. Thank you for asking. I'm trying, just so everybody knows, I'm trying to get through these. They come in bunches, and it's hard to make sure I get them all. Thank you, random nobody. When did people waving the U.S. flag all of a sudden become a bunch? Yeah, I don't know, about 93. If I had to put a year on it, around then is when it really lost all real meaning. After the Gulf War, it became a bumper sticker. After the first Gulf War, it became a bumper sticker rather than a symbol of anything. Thank you, Ernie B. Thank you, JD Wilder. What made you want to get this deep into politics, and what were you doing when you decided to jump in? I don't know how this started. I was a journalist, and I really covered international relations more than anything else. And as things progressed, specifically, it was with Trump's immigration policies. It brought me more and more domestically, and then it was very slow progression to get where I'm at. Let's see. Tammuz. Thank you, Tammuz. I've been thinking, since Fed hasn't been helping much and supposedly the stock they have is theirs, why we even have them? What would it look like if the states just took over and Fed died? The Articles of the Confederation. The initial way the country was structured, that's what it would look like. And even, or that period before the Civil War, when states' rights wasn't code for racism, it actually meant that the states were had control of their own territory. That's what it would look like. It's not entirely, it's not a whole lot better, but it's a different approach to it. Thank you, Tori Forland. Thank you, Danielle. Please let us know what we can do to help you or the communities. And haven't thought about. Oh, as far as the fires, I think we're going to be okay. I know that the media is painting this to be like horde right now. From what I've seen, it's not really that bad. I mean, it's horrible if you were one of those directly affected, but it doesn't seem to be a giant event, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, if something comes up, I will definitely let you guys know. Thank you, RC Maverick. Let's see, mental health and lockdown. Okay, so I'm hoping to actually have a interview with a psychologist, a therapist, who's going to talk about that hopefully next week. And we're going to get some real insight into it, not just mine. Are you a car guy? I'm not really. My wife's a Jeep girl, but no, I'm not a huge car guy. The Miss Mags, thank you. My hardware store has people put their hand on their weapon when they're asked to social distance, wear a mask. You know what? After what happened the other day, I can't say I blame them. I would hope that wouldn't be necessary, but I understand why they would have a policy like that after what just went down. And if you don't know, somebody got shot. They asked someone to put on a mask, and some nut popped off a round. Thank you, Bose Einstein. There are polygraph articles showing if you delete influencers in the test, and if both sides agree to take it, it can be admitted by the Supreme Court. People versus Biden and Trump. Yeah. As far as lie detectors, they're not yeah, they're admissible, but that doesn't make them more accurate. There are a whole bunch of easy ways to beat those. Even the more advanced ones, like the voice stress stuff. There's a whole lot of stuff that can be used to defeat that. And with the consultants that are on hand for political candidates, they'd be able to beat them. Thank you, Rebel Scum. What do you think of Shelley Luther's arrest? I don't know who Shelley Luther is off the top of my head. Yeah, there you go. Bundy passed 6 polygraphs. Yeah. Thank you, Deacon Moore. Hello from Scotland. If things get worse and you had to eat Alex, oh, the whole thing about his neighbors. Yeah, that's a weird cat. he needs some help. Thank you, Leanne Brault. Evening, sir. How about touch on Social Security and living below the poverty line while on it and working? How can we save ourselves, get off this system? How can we better ourselves in this mess? That if you're in that situation, you've already been let out by the system. You've been lost by the system. You have fallen through the cracks. And we need a system change. That's one of those things that requires systemic change. You can advocate for it through a state government. You can do however you want. But aside from either succeeding within the system that exists, the capitalist system that exists, or having that safety net in place and getting systemic change, it will constantly be a struggle. Thank you, Alexandra Slater. Why do all these people feel like they're being oppressed because they're being asked to put on a mask? People are scared, and they don't actually know. They don't know what to do, and it's fear-based. And it's one of the things in this country, fear, the response to fear ends up being violence. And it's something that we should definitely take to heart, and we're going to have to work on changing that response. Jake Nichols, hey Bo, just FYI, I'm making good progress on my bug bag. I messaged you for the video before. I'll make a video when it's done to share. Thank you.
People seem to forget we made a lot of changes after that.
Oh, okay.
Changes become normal.
Yeah.
Howdy, internet people.
My wife is here. Bo's wife is here. She said hi.
Just for a minute. Bye.
Let's see. All right. Okay. I think I'm caught up here.
I'll take this with me.
Thank you, Drama Mama. I wish you have questions. I always have questions for you until you're alive. And then I blank out. Please wish your wife a happy Mother's Day.
Thank
Absolutely. You. Do I think Trump has dementia or is just stupid? I think that he is he's doing what he's always done. He's an authoritarian person, and he doesn't actually have the skills to back up being the guy. And doesn't have the skills to back up being the guy. So he's always focused on branding. So a lot of the stuff that he's saying would make sense in the business world. It just doesn't make sense in government. It doesn't make sense in leadership if you're actually trying to accomplish something. It makes sense from advertising, get people talking about you. But that's not always a good thing when you're talking about leadership, if people are talking about how little faith they have in you. I got a thing saying that I missed Tori Forland. Thank you. If there's a question there, I can't see it. Thank you, Mark Witherspoon. Some darn guy. Hey, Bo, did you happen to see the video of the police in Arresting a shop worker dressed as a stormtrooper. No, I didn't see that one. I have to look for that though. Hopefully nobody got hurt as I'm sitting here laughing. But thank you, Raul. Why do some conservatives not see how safety nets are not just to support lazy people, but are there to keep a workable economy? No examples from Cali change your mind. I hope so. I hope the examples will change your mind. I think this situation is going to change a lot of people's minds about safety nets, because now they can't just say, oh, it's those people. They don't want to work. They, blah, 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 blah. That's why the Republican Party is having such a hard time with messaging right now when it comes to this, because for a long time they've used that as, you're one of us, you're better than those people that need help. And now all of these people need help. And in many cases, they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. And I'm hoping that we're going to see a shift here after this. What gives you energy? What drives you? The hope for change drives me. The hope for eventually getting to where we're going is what drives me. What gives me energy? The little wins along the way. We've had wins on this channel where we have affected an outcome when we covered something specific and went to change it, talked about it and did a call for action. We were actually able to change the outcome of what was going on, or at least help in that manner. And those little wins keep me moving. To be honest, that is definitely something that helps. So thank you, Siberial. What kind of support can people in the international community lend to Americans who feel they are held hostage by a system they cannot affect? Man. Lobby for lobby for less immigration restrictions in your home country so people can leave. Because, the U.S. government doesn't listen to its own citizens. It's not going to listen to anybody overseas. And I think there are a lot of people, like one of the things Canada has is they don't allow felons in, which sounds great. Okay. It sounds great in theory, because in most countries, a felony is a serious thing. In the United States, there are felony charges that would be misdemeanors everywhere else in the world. So that prohibition actually, since it's not done case by case, it's not violent felony, it's not actual crime felony. There's a whole bunch of things that are felonies that are victimless. I would suggest that would be a change, because a lot of the people who end up on the bottom rung of things have been hit in that manner too, because they don't have the money to pay for a defense. So we are the most incarcerated country in the world. Let's see, any thoughts on the book, The Fourth Turning? I don't have any thoughts on it. I haven't read it, but I'll take a look at it. Do you think a homelessness surge or rent mortgage forgiveness is more likely? Right now, a surge. But I'm hoping that will change, because I think that the landlords will end up lobbying for it. Because if everybody goes, if there are a large portion of people go out onto the street, their values go down, what they can charge for rent, because there's less demand, because people can't afford it. They have to drop prices, because then it won't equal the mortgage. And there's a whole cascading domino thing here that just isn't being looked at yet. But I'm hoping it will be, because I'm thinking that a lot of those people will end up lobbying in favor of their tenants, not because they're good people, but because it benefits them personally. Okay. Trying to catch back up here. Michelle King would love to have a sit down and chat with Miss Bo. She might do that at one point. She was on the last one. And then, and then she cussed, and I try to keep the channel clean, and then YouTube changed the things to where we can now actually mark if it has that on it. And anyway, that video is still not up. but that's probably something that will eventually happen. Thank you, Con the Stoner. Hey, Bo, love your work. Was wondering if you're familiar with Proudhound and what Proudhound, and what you think of his work if you are. Try not to get too far into this. I would suggest that it is worth reading. I would recommend a lot of his work. And even in a light skim on the internet of just some of the base ideas, might be a good idea to see if you're interested in picking up the rest of it. Thank you, Kyle Green. Hey, Bo. Just been watching since Kaepernick videos. Thanks for the differing perspectives on ideas. You made me think and evolve. Thanks a million for your, well, thank you. Thank you, Thump. Many thanks for what you do. Should have gotten around to donating. Any thoughts on the Canadian First Nation rail blockades earlier this year? This goes back to what I was talking about, the checkpoints on tribal land here. If it's tribal land, it's tribal land. It is tribal land. They don't have, I don't believe that federal governments or state governments should be able to interfere in that. If I'm not mistaken, a lot of those checkpoints or the blockades were going where they were entering tribal property. And I could be wrong about that, but do you think it's time to start requiring black men in the USA to be trained in weapons and required to carry at all times? I don't believe in requiring. I don't believe in mandatory almost anything. But I don't think that's a bad idea for after the last few days and what's been in the media the last few days, which is just the most recent in a long chain of events of little spurts like that where it actually winds up getting coverage. I actually have a video. Let's talk about being armed and black. I do not think it's a bad idea. It just you have to be very careful because law enforcement will use that from the other side. But yeah, there's no easy answer to that question because there's the ramifications from it on law enforcement side. Thank you, Rick. I don't see whatever photo you're talking about. Thank you, Bose. Will the shooting in Georgia on the black jogger who wanted will change any laws? I'm a dual citizen. I don't think it's going to change any laws other than maybe the citizen's arrest law in Georgia. The problem there isn't the way the laws were written for that one. It was that the DA, from what I understand, wouldn't allow them to be enforced the way they were written. But we'll have to see. I'm still not convinced that's going to end in a favorable way. Thank you, Mark Witherspoon. I will find that video and drag it back out because I've got a whole video on it on my hat and the Curious George thing. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Aiden. I have not seen Planet of the Humans. Thank you, Shruggy Emoji. Thoughts on cryptocurrency? Thoughts on the Federal Reserve? Man, that's a huge topic. I like the idea of cryptocurrency. I like the idea of a currency that is not tied to a nation. And I think that with time, that's something that could become a very effective and useful tool for people. I don't know that it's there yet, but I don't want to trash the evolution that might get to where it needs to be. So there's that. As far as the Federal Reserve, there's so much in that. I am somebody who generally likes the tangible asset kind of thing. The Federal Reserve is not that. However, I'm not an economist and most economists that I have talked to have said that it's not as horrible as it seems, and that it helps stabilize markets and all of this stuff. And honestly, I don't know that I'm up to date enough with the information to have a hard opinion on it. But let's see. Thank you, Sherikov. Everyone should know how to handle a firearm, just in case they are in a situation where a firearm needs handling. This, of course, has nothing to do with the issue of owning and keeping a firearm. Thank you, Jeremy White. Even if I don't always agree, you learn something. That's, the thing is, I learn in every comment section. So that's an even trade for me. I'm hoping I'm caught up. Thank you, Jim. If I've missed something, put it in all caps or something to let me know. I think I've got everybody. Tara Reid is not the Sharknado actress. Do you remember which video you talked about the squirrel in the shoebox? It was one about, I would imagine it was one about how people don't understand the purpose of a firearm. I don't remember the title. But I've only told that story once on this channel. So I think it was in one of the ones right around the period when I did the like 3 or 4 part series. I think it was in one of those. Thank you, Nate Roberts. What are your views on monopoly purchasing journalism outlets? Do you feel the unionization of journalists as a defense for this issue, unionism versus new Gilded Age? I don't. I think the solution there is having less outlets and having more journalists. You're seeing it more and more now where journalists go off on their own. And I think that's actually going to be the right route, because eventually doing that will be profitable enough for the journalist to have the fact checkers and crew that they need, at which point you don't have somebody from on high saying, this is what needs to be, this is your angle. This is what you need to cover. The journalist is going to cover what they feel is important. It's still going to be important to critically examine and critically think about what they say. But at least the biases are going to be the biases of the individual journalist. And you'll be able to find those because everybody has social media. I mean, it's real easy to find out where biases are now when you're talking about individuals. When you're talking about large companies, not so much. It's harder to track the money than it is a tweet. So I think that if we want a more accurate and more free press, that's the way it's going to end up going. And it's going that way slowly anyway. You are seeing a lot of people that are stepping out from networks and stepping out from outlets and starting their own things. And no matter how small, it helps a lot. Now, initially, yeah, it was all the inflammatory people. But now you're seeing a lot of hard fact journalists making that move. And I think that's important. And I think that's actually going to be the answer. Now, a union among those people would also probably be pretty useful, especially when it comes time or some kind of insurance thing as far as liabilities to protect them from lawsuits and stuff like that. I think that would be extremely useful. But what do you think about requiring safety and usage training before buying a firearm? I think that people need, it's one of those things. It's kind of catch-22. I think that you need training for a firearm. However, you can't get it without a firearm. I think that prior to this is one of those things that boils down to a personal responsibility thing. In order to train and to become safe with one, you have to have one. And you have to be instructed and use it. My level of what I would consider acceptable is not anybody's rational idea. I would want somebody to be a lot more trained than most would be okay with. But I also, again, it's one of those things, I'm not big on making a lot of stuff mandatory. But it's one of those things that we should advocate for, if that makes sense. I don't want there to be a law saying you must complete 40 hours of training, because then that 40 hours is going to become worthless. I would much rather you have to be able to accomplish X before you're granted a concealed carry or something like that. That would make more sense to me than time, because we've all been to classes that were literally just killing time and not learning anything. I would be more about skill proficiency. And I know that doesn't make sense. You know, you actually want the people to be better at using a thing they should never have to use. But if they become good with it, the respect will follow. A lot of these people, they go out, they buy one, they think they respect it, and then they don't. And tragedy follows. I think that my level of training, what I would want, is higher than anything a government would recommend or require. But I also don't think it should be mandatory. I think people should do it because they understand that it's necessary. If you're gonna carry a weapon, you need to be trained. Okay. Let's see. Oh, how do we distinguish between greed and opportunism in global trade? Does the U.S. bully trade policy have a place in the 21st century, or just, man, that's a tough question. Okay, so we've got my personal views. Cooperation is more important than competition. And I think that that's the way of the future. The U.S.'s current policy is not based on that. So I do think our policy needs to change. However, it needs to change in an equitable way. And I don't know that the current changes that are being advocated are going to lead us that route. I think it's more, right now, a lot of what I'm seeing as far as trade is making it equal between the big economies now. That doesn't help everywhere else in the world. And I think I think that's the route we should go from an international relations standpoint. Economists, they may have a different take on that. Thank you, Sammy. Thoughts on martial arts training if in a state that doesn't allow overseas? I definitely, again, that's one of those things that I think everybody should be proficient in being able to defend themselves. It's also good exercise. It's good discipline. You learn a whole lot of other stuff along the way. Even short classes, if you don't have a lot of time, because when people say martial arts, most times they're thinking Eastern martial arts. If you don't have the time to go through those, there are still programs out there that will guide you through it and will help you, and will make you practically proficient. But they don't include all of the discipline and stuff.
She's being requested. Do you have pets?
Come here.
There you go. Oh,
Somebody apparently is asking for the dog. There's Baroness. Thank you, Texas Bala. I think I'm caught up on those. And I think I'm caught up on those. If I missed any, just, type them in all caps. And then Miss Bo has written some down that I can't actually read. Is the person Bo's wife on Twitter actually her? Bose, it's at Bo's wife too. Yes, that's really her. Thoughts on the book, The Fourth Turning? I haven't read it. Since plastic is slow to decompose, why not build tiny houses using plastic? Yeah, why not? I mean, that would seem to make sense. Thank you, Raul. And no worries. Let's see. How do you prepare a bug out bag for diabetic supplies? Okay. So what you're going to have to do with that is they have coolers that are solar powered that are, or they're hand crank. They have a bunch of different kind that can help keep that on hand. The problem is getting that stuff ahead of time and getting the medicine to have it stashed away. That's one of those things that there's not a good answer for. And you are going to have to improvise at the moment things go bad. You're going to have to consider what you might do in a situation where there is no rule of law to be ready for that. I hope that answers that question. Name of the videos on coping mechanisms. I actually think it's like, let's talk about coping or something similar to that. Let's see, what is your background? You have such diverse fields. Okay, so I was a security consultant, a contractor. We're going to talk, just so you know, I'm going on Catherine's stream tomorrow, and we're going to talk about this in depth and this industry in depth because people have an idea of it as everybody's like Blackwater. That's not even remotely true, but that's the widely held perception of it. In that, I picked up a lot of skills, and then I was a journalist. And those things together, they require a lot of interdisciplinary studies. You have to learn about a lot of different fields to understand how things are going to play out, especially if you're on the more academic side of things. Let's see, thoughts on community-driven alternate economies like Ithaca? I don't actually know what that question is. I'm going to be honest. Thank you, Internet Surfer. Who streamed tomorrow? Catherine's. She's on YouTube. I think it's actually Catherine YT, and Catherine is spelled with a Y. I've had her on the channel before, and she was part of the skit that we did about the Bay of Pigs invasion. Can y'all hear the dog eating? Because that seems really loud.
It's the fat one, not very nice.
Can we get a link to tomorrow's stream? I don't have it, but yeah, I'll put it out on my stuff when I go on.
Is the pumpkin real?
I'm sorry, what?
Is the pumpkin real?
No, the pumpkin is not real. What are you asking?
I know it's not real. It's a question that somebody's had.
Should people living under the poverty line be allowed to hunt year round? I mean, there's a whole lot to that as far as populations of the animals, and that there's a lot of room for abuse there. I would suggest that within certain limits, yeah, like, you know, the normal limits that occur when you're managing a game population, yeah, that should be factored in because that could help. Pup's got to eat too. Yeah, and he's really loud. That's Destro. That's the husky. He's a big boy. Let's see.
Why?
All right. Thank you. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Why is the pumpkin fake? Because it was the one leftover Halloween decoration in the house that didn't make it to the attic.
Yeah. Okay. So the pumpkin went up there. The pumpkin went up there because there was a religious group, and I use that term loosely. There were a bunch of bigoted pastors who targeted a YouTuber. and they called him a big fruit and a pumpkin. This was the pastor saying all this, and that the pumpkin is the biggest fruit of all. So he's a pumpkin and da 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 da. And they happened to be coming to my area, and I thought I might announce myself as a pumpkin that might show up and say hi. That's where it came from, and it has stayed there ever since. It's a Halloween decoration. That's where it really came out from. So I am talking about Catherine on YouTube, and that, but I think that's spelled with a Y. So he was hungry, I guess, which I don't understand. I mean, other than he's massive and he's always hungry, but thank you, TJ. Thank you, Ian. What's my take on 5G? It's a cell phone technology. I don't, there's no conspiracy there. The whole, that if, yeah, that's just not a thing. Felda 9000, do more patches on my gear, make me an operator. Yeah. The more you have, the more operatory you are. You just looked it up and her name is Catherine with no Y. Really? Man. Okay. Let's see. Your opinion on Florida's unemployment system. I don't know much about it other than what I've heard. I've got friends that tried to get on it and tried to access it and basically couldn't even get in. After 5 or 6 days, they were finally able to get their claim, but they weren't told anything and they didn't get money for a very, very long time. Somebody's asking about the origin of Rule 303. Yeah, it has to do with that incident. And if you're familiar with the initial incident involving Morant, you're like, wow, what a horrible thing to take a slogan from. There's an evolution of that term as it moves through the contracting community. There's a video on it. I actually think it's Let's Talk About Rule 303 and Parkland is when I first brought it up, because I saw a bunch of cops wearing it who did not understand what it actually meant. And it bothered me. Thank you, Z. And thank you, Bose Einstein. Is it wise, with all of your security journalistic knowledge background, advisable to share a 0-point energy solution against the current system? I am progressing in it and will share for free. Is it okay? I get what you're asking now. Is this I'd have to know whether or not you intended on giving it away. If you're looking at, if you have some technology that is going to be widely beneficial and you are looking at to give it away, then yeah, absolutely. Get it out there as early as possible and you can crowdsource it. You can, other people will help. Then the other side of that is if you're not, and you're looking to make a profit on it, then your best thing would be to develop it as far as you can, patent it, and allow people to improve on it. That would be the socially responsible thing to do, rather than have a patent and protect it to the extreme where it can't be improved on. Somebody done it asking what to do about rape culture. Mm-hmm. And okay, I didn't get that one. All right, I didn't see it. Okay, so wow, that's a huge thing. Our issue there has to do with how men are granted, growing up, they're excused for just about everything. And there's also the idea that power is what makes a man. Most of those kinds of crimes are not actually about the act. They're about power. And that conditioning happens very, very early on in life, through grade school, through middle school, through high school. Everything becomes competitive. It becomes about power, and masculinity ends up getting perverted into I'm going to use the term, everybody cover your ears if you don't want to hear it, a toxic version of it that only values the extremes. And I think that that has a whole lot to do with the current culture in the U.S. The strongest move there is evaluating the way we educate and condition young men. And I know people are saying, we know we're not supposed to do that. Yeah, well, then it is as big a problem as it is. But so, I mean, in a short answer, education starting very, very early and changing the way we prioritize what's important within masculinity. Thank you, the Blue Noble. Or is that Nobel? Is that a Nobel Prize? Public Works Project, integrated edible trees and shrubs into our infrastructure to reconnect people with their produce. There are fewer farmers now. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's, yeah, I'm strong advocate for that. I've got probably 5 or 6 videos talking about how to landscape your house with stuff that's edible, you know, changing out the Japanese boxwoods that most people have in front of their windows for raspberries or whatever, some thorny object, because the whole reason those are there to keep people away from your windows. You know, there are better alternatives that also produce food. Thank you, JD Wilder.